PM, American Public Media.
Tidbits, family owned and operated since 1985. Open for dine-in, delivery, and takeout at 3 locations: Bay Meadows, Hendricks, and Mandarin. Fresh sandwiches, salads, and soups. Order online, menu, and newsletter at claristidbits.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, a new school board was sworn in last night, eliciting both praise and protest. We ask organizers of last night's pre-meeting demonstration about their concerns. We also hear several voices celebrating the new conservative majority. Then, sleep gummies for kids may contain toxic levels of melatonin. We ask neurologist Dr. Joe Sirven what parents need to know about the supplements they're giving their kids. And some of the most acclaimed artists on the First Coast open up their workspaces. We preview the CoRK Arts District Fall Open Studios event with one of their featured artists. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The House Ethics Committee is set to meet today. It is not clear if members will vote to release the report on Matt Gaetz. He has been accused of sex trafficking, an allegation he's denied. Gaetz resigned from Congress last week after President-elect Donald Trump chose him to be the next Attorney General. NPR's Giles Snyder reports now some senators are weighing in on the matter.
The House ethics investigation into Gaetz is looming over the Senate, particularly over the Senate Judiciary Committee, which will hold hearings on Gaetz's nomination. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley is in line to lead the panel when the GOP takes a majority in January.
If they want a speedy consideration of this nomination, we've got to have as much transparency as we can have.
The current Democratic chair of the Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin of Illinois, says Gaetz's decision to step down from Congress last week was designed to stop the public release of the report. The House Ethics Committee has been looking into accusations including illicit drug use and sex trafficking, allegedly involving a 17-year-old. Gaetz denies any wrongdoing. Giles Snyder, NPR News.
Donald Trump has tapped Wall Street executive and billionaire investor Howard Lutnick to be Commerce Secretary. There had been disputes among Trump allies, some of whom wanted Lutnick to be the next Treasury Secretary. But NPR's Maria Aspen says in this role, Lutnick will be able to work on one of Trump's main campaign promises.
Commerce also has this big role to play in the economy, and Lutnick has been very enthusiastic about Trump's promises to impose sweeping tariffs on a whole range of imports. Trump really campaigned on this, and Lutnick has embraced it. At that rally last month, he even said he wants the country's economy to go back to when, he said, it was great, in 1900.
NPR's Maria Aspen reporting. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to Gaza yesterday. He's vowing that Hamas won't return to power in the Palestinian enclave. Netanyahu also offered a substantial reward for the return of any hostage held by the militant group. NPR's Scott Newman reports from Tel Aviv.
Netanyahu spoke from an area in Gaza controlled by the military. He said Israel would pay $5 million for the return of each Israeli hostage still being held in Gaza. But that offer also came with a threat. Whoever harms a hostage, his blood is on his head, Netanyahu warned. We will chase you down, he said. 251 hostages were seized in last year's Hamas-led attack on Israel. 101 remain in Gaza, but about a third of those are now believed dead. Netanyahu has faced intense pressure to strike a deal to free the hostages and end the war that has killed nearly 44,000 Palestinians, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. Scott Newman, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Allegiant Airlines is offering new nonstop flights from Jacksonville International Airport to Akron, Des Moines, and Grand Rapids starting next May. Flights to Akron, Canton, and Des Moines will be on Thursdays and Saturdays. Flights to Grand Rapids will be Mondays and Fridays. The Jacksonville Aviation Authority says the flights give Northeast Floridians the opportunity to visit some of their favorite places in the Midwest. Allegiant's other nonstop services to the Midwest include St. Louis, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. To book flights, go to AllegiantAir.com. Like many of you, people in Florida's agricultural industry suffered tremendous losses from Hurricane Helene. Mahika Cookday reports on the damages to farm production statewide.
Florida's agricultural losses from Hurricane Helene are at least $40 million and could go as high as $162 million. That's according to a report from the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. Institute Director Krista Court says some types of land were affected worse than others.
There's nearly 6.1 million acres, most of that being that grazing land that goes into the animals and animal products category, but a significant amount of field and row crops as well.
About 18,000 acres of agricultural areas experienced what the report called high-intensity weather conditions. Court says that some farmers may have avoided additional devastating losses from Helene, but only because they had not yet replanted after Debbie hit just 8 weeks before. I'm Mahika Cookday in Tampa.
Highs in the upper 70s today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, celebrating the hard work, commitment, and achievements of the 1 in 5 college students who are parents. More at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, even before the Duval County School Board could be sworn in, 7 advocacy groups staged a proactive protest. But their voices were countered by a strong show of support for the incoming members. We hear from both sides. Later in the program, a new report warns of potentially toxic levels of melatonin contained in children's sleep gummies. But first, a new school board took the dais last night, cementing a conservative majority for the first time in recent years. Several groups staged a protest before the event to express concern about the direction of the school board, and we're joined by some of them. Katie Hathaway, representing public school defenders. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, Ann.
Kelly Frazier, president of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
And Judy Shecklin, retired school counselor and political action chair for Jacksonville Now. Good morning, Judy.
Good morning.
So this is a very contentious topic, we should say, just off the top. We're going to be hearing several voices from the other side during this discussion, but we also invite your calls and questions. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. Kelly, why did you hold this event last night?
Well, it was important. It was important for us. I first got wind of a lot of the social media posts from Tony Ricardo, actually. That's what caught our attention.
The new school board, one of the new 3 school board members.
Exactly. And the information that was on his social media page just really brought a lot of outrage considering his new position. So we wanted to bring light to that and address it because it was a lot of bigoted things there. He talked about women. He talked about it was racist. It was some homophobic things in there. It was just a lot of different things that we wanted to address and make sure that, when he takes his new seat, him and anybody else in that new role, that they consider the children and not their political side.
Yeah. And so Tony Ricardo, as I said, he's one of 3 new board members that was sworn in last night. He has since made his social settings private instead of public. But during the campaign and during the run up to the election, there were a lot of articles done about the posts that he was making. Some of them, as you said, seemed to be openly homophobic. Some of them appeared to be demeaning of powerful Black women, including Michelle Obama, jokes about her gynecologist, the vice president, Kamala Harris, referring to her as a prostitute. And there were, Black women in the community in particular found that offensive.
Very offensive. I mean, how dare you? How dare you say that she was prostituting to get to her position? No, she got there because she deserved to be there. And she served in her position as vice president because she deserved to be there. So how dare he make those comments or at least post them on his social media? And like I said, even when it comes to the children, like whenever somebody sees something like that, it lets us know how you think.
So this is a shift in the board, Katie. 5 of the 7 now a conservative majority. They did have a conservative majority, I guess, prior, but this is a much stronger position. The community has spoken, and 5 of these candidates endorsed by the conservative group Moms for Liberty. What was your goal with the protest that you held last night?
Yes, like you said, 5 of them are backed by Moms for Liberty now. And our goal was to set forth our expectations for this new incoming board prior to the swearing in ceremony and to send a strong message to the community and to children that bigotry has no place in our schools. And we are not going to tolerate any sort of extremist policies being pushed by this new board. And children, our children, will not be used as political pawns to push forward an agenda.
So we should say Superintendent Chris Bernier, he's also new. He's also been supported by Moms for Liberty. There were several representatives of Moms for Liberty there celebrating the new board last night, including Holly Dean. She's the outgoing chapter chair of Moms for Liberty Duval. Let's hear what she had to say.
I got involved with Moms for Liberty because they were standing up for parental rights. Finally, a group was listening to we the parents. I worked with countless members from our chapter to advocate to the school board. With the election of Tony, Melody, and Reggie, adding to Charlotte and April, we finally have a school board that will pay attention and be focused on children and about parental rights and education, about school safety and fiscal responsibility. I have seen these 3 people work so hard. They are true warriors for children. We are finally in good hands. Finally, parents' voices will not fall on deaf ears. This 5-member majority has an opportunity to effect true change. I will be cheering you on, and I'm so proud of you.
So that was Holly Dean, chapter chair for Moms for Liberty Duval. Judy, this board is in a position to make some significant changes with the majority that they have and also just sort of their unity of vision. Are there particular things that you're concerned about or that now is concerned about in terms of policy changes?
Yes, I think as now, but also, as parents, grandparents, community members, we care about all of our students, and particularly our most vulnerable students and those who are more likely to be bullied and experience challenges in schools. And we would hope that this majority would recognize that we need to continue to provide resources, which we lost last year. One of NOW's focuses is LGBTQ rights. And our concern is last year, before these decisions were made, we had Jasmine as support for our LGBTQ students. We had rainbows. We had training as counselors about how to work with students and help them to deal with bullying and challenges. We know they're most at risk for suicide, for depression, underperforming in school. And we're concerned that we will begin to see a real shift, as we already have, in supports that are provided for them. And so that's a real concern.
And this event last night really was in large part sort of focused on those tweets and social posts of Tony Ricardo. We mentioned some of the comments he made about Black women in particular, but he's also described transgender identity as a mental disorder, referred to transgender people as freaks and mental detectives, and described same-sex marriage as a perverted agenda. And so he has been very clear, I guess, about his perspective, but he's on this program and he's said that he will represent all children of Duval County and do so with an even hand.
That makes it very hard to believe when he has thoughts like that, and he shows it. It's one thing. One thing that really has gotten to me about this is that people have addressed it as being freedom of speech. And for me, freedom of speech, everybody has a right to that. But there are consequences to freedom of speech, and that may be positive or negative. But one thing it does for me, for someone that does not know Tony Ricardo, is that it does not give me a pretty picture of him or the way that he thinks. Representation is a huge thing when it comes to our children. We need people to represent. And when you don't have the background or know what they need, it makes it very hard for you to be able to speak to what they need. So with the thoughts that he's shown us that he has about all these different groups, it makes it hard to believe that he will address them fairly, as you said.
So one of the speakers at last night's meeting was Clay County resident and Moms for Liberty Director of Engagement, Tia Bess. And she pushed back on the narrative that Moms for Liberty or the supporters of these board members were in any way expressing bias. Let's hear from her.
I'm a founding member of Moms for Liberty, and I stand firm with everyone on this board. So I'm here to set the record straight. Before you say we're racist, book banning Nazis, I'm Black, surprise. I'm gay, surprise. And nobody cares about that. Take care of our kids, and to everyone that's watching home, we gotta make it a purple solution. We have to come together.
Kelly, I just kind of ask you to follow up on that because Tia does have a very diverse background. She is, an open lesbian living with her partner. She has a son with special needs. She's a Black woman. She kind of represents a very sort of diverse subset of people, group of people in various ways. And yet she's aligned with this very conservative group.
She is one person, okay? And Tia, she has her background, she has what she believes in, but we also have what we believe in. So I don't want to speak against her because I don't know her. I don't know, why she chose to believe in what Moms for Liberty stands for. So I can't really speak to that. What I can say is that there are plenty of people that fear what Moms of Liberty believes in. So she has her right to think and say what she has to say, but she can't speak for everyone on that side.
We're talking about the new school board that was just sworn in last night. Praise and both protest as well over the swearing in. We're taking your calls and questions. If you want to reach us, you can call 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I want to take a call from Mike on the South Side. Good morning, Mike. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. What was particularly disturbing last night was when a lot of these social media posts that were racist and sexist and homophobic were pointed out. The people in the room that supported those conservative Moms for Liberty candidates were laughing. They actually found those posts humorous, and that was just appalling, really. And even at the event that was held, there were some hecklers in the background, basically with signs saying, we won, get over it. And I'd like to hear what the folks on the panel have to say about those folks that say, well, they won, just kind of get over it and move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Katie.
Yeah, a handful of us did go inside that meeting after the rally or press conference to public comment. And what I witnessed felt more like a Trump MAGA rally rather than a swearing-in ceremony, traditional swearing-in ceremony for school board members. And it felt like hyper right-wing. Our Floridians just voted to keep our school board elections nonpartisan, but what I saw was hyper partisanship in that room, and so that was very concerning to me as a parent. I'm sorry, what did Mike ask for us to cover? The people that were heckling us. Yes, they could not let us peacefully say our piece. They came over with their pictures and were getting into our pictures saying, we won, get over it. And I just don't think that that is a unifying message to send to teachers or children in this district.
We've got a call from Don in North Jacksonville. Good morning, Don. Go ahead.
Hi, I've called a few times to the station. Thank you for taking my call. Aside being a caller and a listener, I'm also a reporter, a journalist. And I attended a Governor DeSantis press conference over a year ago where Moms of Liberty were present here in Jacksonville. And I asked specifically the question. I said, we understand there's a concern about trans matters with children, but are you against gay rights in general? And they refused to answer the question. Either Moms of Liberty, who were present, and Governor DeSantis. They said something like, we don't understand your question. We don't know what you're trying to say. So for me, it seems a little disingenuous that they didn't answer the question. When I asked clearly, do you believe in gay rights? And aside the trans issues with children. And they didn't answer. So I just want to share that and see maybe what people think about that.
Yeah, Don. And we should say, the governor has been a part of this, of these races, a number of the school board members that are currently seated or supported by the governor. Judy.
Yeah, he actually targeted those races and provided support. And there were also misleading pieces of information about candidates that ran against the Moms for Liberty. But I did want to address the issue regarding the treatment and perception of LGBTQ families and gay rights. We know that same-sex marriage is the law of the land. That's been decided by the Supreme Court. And yet our students are not comfortable, our teachers are not comfortable having students talk about their families when they include same-sex parents. And we talk about parental rights. Well, don't those parents have rights? I mean, isn't their relationship and their family also something that should be celebrated? So, I just throw that out there. I hope that we will recognize that all of our students and all of our parents deserve the right to be represented and protected by our school board. It isn't we versus them. It's all of us.
Yeah. But there was, as we say, this was a pretty overwhelming election. It was alluded to a couple of times by the speakers, that this was a rightward shift nationally and that is just being reflected in the electorate here in Duval County. There were a number of Republicans there last night, city council members, Terrence Freeman, Ron Salem, Mike Gay. Mike Gay's wife spoke at length, welcoming the new board. They're all Republicans, and this is a red voting district, it appears.
Well, yes, I want to also point out that the majority of school board elections are decided in an August primary, and that's very low voter turnout. So I think 20% of people decided those seats. And so I would hope that the overwhelming majority of people here in Duval do support safe and inclusive spaces in schools for every child.
Yeah. Kelly, you looked like you were going to say something there.
No, I was just saying that it does make it very difficult to believe when he has, such beliefs and it's not hidden. We see he's shown us, he's made it private now, but we see how he feels about it. So it just makes it very hard to believe that he will be fair when you think so poorly of different backgrounds.
We have a call, Jennifer Jenkins. She is with Educated We Stand. Good morning, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful. Go ahead.
I would love to kind of compound on that. Contrary to what Moms for Liberty is saying, that this election cycle was a national and a statewide mandate, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that is reflected in our school board races across the state. Moms for Liberty and DeSantis endorsed candidates lost all over the state, even in historically ruby red areas and founding counties of Moms for Liberty, such as Sarasota and Indian River. I started an organization called Educated We Stand, and we supported 18 candidates all across the state of Florida, and over 70% of them won. And so even though people are feeling concerned with good reason right now and dispirited, we need to remember that when hundreds of thousands of dollars are being poured into some of these communities, unfortunately, like Jacksonville, we need to understand that we need to continue to fight back because it isn't a mandate. We still have control. We need to unify and come together, just like these incredible women that you have there with you today.
Jennifer, I want you to hang on a second because I want to hear from Citizens Defending Freedom. They're also a political organization in Jacksonville. Kathleen Murray is the executive director. This is a group that endorsed the majority of candidates on the board. Let's hear what she had to say last night.
CDF would also like to thank our new school board members for the great sacrifice in time, energy, money, and resources in running for public office. You and your families were slandered by those who would oppose left-wing indoctrination, but nonetheless, you prevailed. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your perseverance. As the director for CDF, I'd like to thank all the CDF volunteers who sent emails to board members, made phone calls, and spoke up at board meetings. Many of you are here tonight, and some of you even brought your family members to witness what can be done if you persevere. Finally, as a nonpartisan organization, we recognize that the battle is not one of political parties, but rather one of good versus evil. The change we see on the board tonight was achieved by the grace of God, and we give him all the glory.
Jennifer, I just want to ask you about this. She's saying basically this isn't about political differences. This is about good versus evil.
When I hear praising the grace of God as the reason why some of these candidates won their elections, the reality is it was the grace of the purse of Ron DeSantis. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars were poured into these races in Jacksonville and in other areas as well, and traditionally, historically red areas where they they should just win without even blinking an eye. The Republican Party of Florida poured about $300,000 right here in my home county of Brevard County, which is just not a traditional method for them. And so to be so misleading to the public about the real intention here is not only frustrating, but as an educator and a mom of a daughter in our public school system, it's concerning and it's dispiriting. And I'm with our communities across the state who are concerned about what's going to happen when we have boards that are ready and willing to push the political divisive agenda of Ron DeSantis further and further to the right.
We have an email from Alex. He says the voters have spoken to not have partisan school boards for the primary reason our children are not political pawns. Moms for Liberty may have started with altruistic, nonpartisan goals, but they have since been co-opted for political gain. The new school board members have shown, particularly at the first meeting to select a new chairman, they have zero qualms about bringing politics in. Good, data-driven ideas should win, and not those that are screamed the loudest. I think the meeting that Alex is referring there is the workshop that was held prior to the school board meeting where they were trying to work out who was going to be the next leader of the school board. And I'm guessing you saw that, Katie.
Yes, I watched that governance meeting last week, and it's concerning to me. It was very contentious, and Reggie Blunt seemed very, not a little bit hostile in the discussion, and it really gave me grave concerns about how this board can move forward and make sound decisions collectively for every child.
I mean, to be fair, I think Reggie Blunt was reacting to being just sort of defined by the Moms for Liberty endorsement. He said it's just one of many people that supported me. He described them as just some ladies who liked him, and you know that there were a variety of other people that weren't being mentioned all the time that endorsed him as well.
Yeah, I understand that, but I also think he needs to own who is endorsing him. I mean, they were putting it out on social media. They were taking a victory lap when he won, and he was at all of the events with them leading up to this election. So he stands with them. It tells me he stands with what they believe in and stand with.
Judy, I want to ask you, I mean, one of the board's apparent policy priorities is maybe re-examining sex education. And so currently there's an opt-out policy if you don't want your child to have a sex education curriculum, and they would like to change that to an opt-in. Is that something that you're watching? I mean, what would be the impact of that?
Yeah, we are absolutely watching that because we know that an opt-out policy typically provides education to a broader swath of students. But if you're having to opt in, you know, we have parents who are very busy, who are not necessarily able because of their the demands on them to be as engaged, to know, you know, oh, I have to opt them in. All students need access to this information. As a counselor, I worked extensively, sadly, with students who had experienced sexual abuse. And very often the education they received through our, at that time, comprehensive human sexuality education gave them the language and the tools to be able to describe their, you know, their victimization. And so they were able to then, you know, be believed. When we cut out that kind of information, not only do students have, you know, healthy information, but they also will not have the information they need to stay safe. So opting in is a terrible idea.
I mean, the movement says that, you know, this is about parental involvement and parental rights, and they want to make sure that the community is receiving the information about there's going to be this curriculum presented. And I think that the concern by some of the new school board members, or even some existing school board members that have conservative leanings, is that perhaps parents aren't getting the message when that curriculum is coming up, and that's why they want them to have to opt in.
Okay, and that's a good point. My experience is that whenever we provided that information and curriculum in schools, we had it available to parents, and it would be, you know, in many cases in the media center, parents were invited to review it, to see it, and they could always choose to opt their children out. But it was available on the website, and so they have an opportunity to be acquainted and review. And if they choose not to do that, that's okay, and they can always opt their kids out. That's always an option. But certainly we should not prevent the majority of students from having access to this very important information.
Kelly Frazier, is the Northside Coalition also watching that issue? And I think of that as an issue perhaps a little bit far afield for a civil rights focused organization.
Uh, it's not something on our forefront, but it is, we're concerned about what makes our community better. And when I think about inclusion, I'm thinking about representation for the children. I'm thinking about what is most important for them. Who actually benefits most from this? And I think about what Judy just said in terms of when something happens to these kids, it takes a village. You have your parents, you have family, you have friends, you have neighbors, and you have the school. And the schools provides information sometimes that the parents that they don't get at home. It also provides a comfort space for them. So it needs to be a place where the kids feel comfortable. So this is not something on our forefront, but it is something that we're concerned about. We're concerned about making our community better and anything that does that.
We've got a call from Susan in Mandarin. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to echo what they're saying about the opt-in. I listened to that board workshop, and Charlotte Joyce was pushing opt-in quite a bit, even though she was given data that very few parents actually opt their kids out. And in response to that, she changed her wording from parents to the community, as if the community has a right greater than what the parents want. And I found that very alarming. And also in that same meeting, April Carney seemed to want to shame people that opted in, because she said that the students who opted out sometimes were shamed. I don't know if that's true or not, but her implication seemed to be that she wanted to shame parents who opted in. And so I found that whole conversation very alarming, and I hope people will listen to that and see about their takeaway.
Thanks, Susan. Your thoughts, Katie?
I watched that as well, and I did hear Charlotte Joyce talk about the opt-in versus opt-out, and I do think that that is extremely dangerous. And at the end of it, she did say, I think children need this curriculum. So I'm just confused why they wasted, I think, 45 minutes discussing that policy if she believes that kids need this. And she talked about the community coming out, and the opt-out doesn't reflect that. But I will say the people that showed up to those board meetings, those were not parents. And so I do think that what's reflective of those numbers who were opting out is accurate at this point.
So what's your takeaway? I mean, after last night's meeting, you began this protest, you entered a meeting, and it seemed very much like the momentum is on the other side, and that the voices, the majority voice was in favor of this new school board and the direction that they're taking.
Yeah, it was. And I will remind people that the pendulum does swing, and we do have 3 seats on the ballot in 2026, and we will go vote, and we will continue to advocate. Being an advocate does not mean talking into an echo chamber. It means showing up in the face of adversity and speaking, and that's what we will continue to do.
Yeah. Well, Katie Hathaway, Kelly Frazier, Judy Shecklin, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne.
Up next, what parents need to know before reaching for the melatonin at bedtime. Welcome back. Well, a new report has created concerns about commonly used over-the-counter supplements for kids. It's found dangerous levels of melatonin in several commonly used sleep gummies. Here to tell us more is Dr. Joe Sirven, neurologist and the host of WJCT News' What's Health Got to Do with It, which airs every Saturday at 4, a great program. Dr. Joe, we love having you here.
I love being here, Ann. It's good to see you this morning.
You too. So what did this report find?
So basically what the report found was that when people take melatonin gummies, and a lot of times this is in the world of kids, that the dosages of what was in those gummies was in some cases at toxic levels. The normal dosage for melatonin should be running somewhere between 0.5 to 1 milligram for kids. It can go all the way up to 3 milligrams for kids. In adults, it's 8 milligrams. In this instance, they found situations where they were at 50 milligrams. So you could do the math very quickly. That is a huge multiple higher than what it is. And this is, I know parents are doing their best and they don't have any idea, but that's the issue. This was like an FDA audit of just gummy bears off the shelves at big box stores. So you can fill in the blanks with where you can get them, not in unusual corners or dark places, places we all shop at. And this is what they found.
And so why is it that levels of melatonin or levels of something in a supplement can be that unreliable?
So that's one of the interesting things that I think people don't fully grasp when it comes to a supplement on a shelf. Medications, as we all know, the prescriptions and lots of audits and safety and things of that sort. But supplements, although they are monitored, they are nowhere monitored like prescription medications. So basically, you're at the whim of the kindness of the manufacturing process that whatever you think you're getting, you're actually getting. And that's just the way supplements work in the U.S. And by the way, that's not just melatonin. That's anything in those, like, I always smile when I see the 4 to 5 aisles of vitamins and supplements at grocery stores and drugstores. That applies to all of them. You have to hope that what's in there is what they say they do, because it is very assessments of these things, audits, are very underfunded, and it is not a priority, I will say, by the FDA.
Yeah, so food and drug, both of those are regulated by the FDA, but there is this vast interstitial area of content. And that's everything, I think, for the kind of protein bars you see
Correct.
in supplement aisles, vitamins, as you say, all kinds of aids for sleeping or health or wellness. And there just really isn't much. So you say the FDA did an audit to discover this. Was this like a routine audit?
Yeah, this is like they only do it for certain things, and I imagine it's things that are becoming very popular or that they see numbers going up. And so it was just an audit of just things out there, and in terms of these melatonin gummies, just to see, does it match the label? And a big chunk of it does not. And again, this does not surprise me, because I've seen this in the world of vitamins. I've seen this in the world of other types of supplements that people take. They're just not there. There are things you can look for on the label, which I can give you in a moment, but if it's just sitting there and if they have nothing that to assure that, it's by the kind of bit of a lottery, if you will.
Well, we're talking about a new report that found sometimes toxic levels of melatonin in children's sleep gummies. If you want to join the conversation or you have a question for Dr. Joe, you can call us at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I mean, I guess let's get to that, Dr. Joe, because one of the things we do want to do is give people some tools.
Sure.
So what is it that I could look for on a label that might help?
There are 3 things I'd ask you to do, and I do this myself because I do take melatonin pills when I swing to West Coast to East Coast.
To be fully transparent.
To be fully transparent. So this is me speaking from a personal perspective. Look for a label that says either GLP, GMP, or USP. GLP, good lab practice, GMP, good manufacturing practice, Or there is this nonprofit called the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. They are a nonprofit that their whole job is to be like the Better Business Bureau of supplements. And if they have their label, that means that that company is literally relented to surprise visits, and that the USP is putting their backing, saying that what's in it for that dosage is there. So either of those three, GLP, GMP, or USP, those will tell you that what I am taking is what I'm taking. And that I'm always very good about checking that label on any supplement or vitamin that I take personally.
One thing that I found very surprising was just how common this has become. So I guess the Journal of the American Medical Association did a study last year, and it asked about how many kids were taking melatonin, and they found that almost 20% of kids ages 5 to 9 were taking it at least once the month prior, and that 6% of kids ages 1 to 4. I mean, 1 seems incredibly young to be giving anything to a child.
There is absolutely this is not an approved practice for kids, I might add. Melatonin is done in certain situations where perhaps in an autism spectrum disorder, if they're having difficult sleeping, but that's under typically a physician that is helping them, or in a situation in adults where it's about sleep-wake cycle, where you're like going between shifts, or you're doing what I was mentioning with jet lag. Those are the situations where this is going to be helpful for. Doing it in kids for 1 year of age or something along those lines, I would hope that would be you would talk to your pediatrician or other primary care doctor before you did that, because that's just not the case. I might remind folks, and this is just how you want to take it. Melatonin is a supplement in the United States. It is prescription only in the United Kingdom or New Zealand. Just to give you a sense of how this plays out in other countries where you need a physician prescription before you even use it.
I mean, you talk about using it for jet lag. So remind us what melatonin is and what it does, because it does exist in the body naturally.
Absolutely. So melatonin is produced by this little gland in the brain called the pineal gland. And it is nicely known as the vampire hormone, if you will, because it comes out in darkness. And the whole point of it is to give you that sense of drowsiness, to get you ready for sleep as night comes in. So in some people who they don't make it, or perhaps are having trouble because they've shifted time zones, because it's not light or it's too bright out. Because when it's light out or too bright, your body starts lessening its production because it thinks it's awake. So the whole point on using melatonin is really it helps you fall asleep, typically about 30 minutes to 2 hours after you take it, but it doesn't do anything to maintain sleep. In that case, it doesn't always work for everyone. But its whole point is to help you fall asleep, but not necessarily maintain it. And it comes out especially in times of darkness. So it's tricking your body into thinking that it's dark. But in terms of how well it works, a cup of chamomile tea can also give you the same impact. It just depends who you are and how you respond to it.
Also, turning off your tablets at night is probably advisable.
You just hit the other part. That's where the blue light issue and things of that sort comes out with digital stuff.
We have a comment from Brandon on Facebook. He says, so much money goes into keeping supplements unregulated. The industry throws in so much money and even made a commercial starring Mel Gibson with a SWAT team coming to, quote, take his vitamins. It's completely ridiculous. Definitely, there's a lot of money in supplements. And surely keeping it unregulated, I'm guessing, makes it less expensive for them to produce and probably easier for them to market.
Exactly. I will say that there are billions of dollars spent. We talk about, I know healthcare is $1 trillion industry, but there are billions spent. There's no insurance covering. This is like you putting your money out for this stuff wherever you choose to purchase it under the assumption that this is going to work, but yet it's all luck. Even I don't want to kind of go in this direction. Even the vitamins we take, people still debate, do we need them if you're eating all, have a good diet and everything? Do you really need some of these things? Uh, those are supplements, and they have big money back behind them, and they certainly don't want folks auditing and fooling with their business models, if you will, if you know what I mean.
Right. So one thing that seems to be, possibly related to these unregulated and sometimes extremely high levels of melatonin is this increase we've seen in ER visits.
Yeah.
And so the CDC found 11,000 emergency department visits for unsupervised melatonin for children and infants between 2019 and 2022, and it accounted for 7% of all ER visits for infants and children under 5.
That to me is extraordinary, because that was something that I would not have seen or expected a decade ago. This just goes to show you how potent the mindset has become about melatonin. That also tells us, like, again, about this dosing piece. Again, this is something that we don't know what it does in children over time. I know it's well-meaning. I know as a parent, I remember those days where you're like, oh God, anything to kind of get this kid to sleep. But on the other hand, it's like when you don't have the backing to someone to make sure that what's in it that you just got for them, then you worry about the safety, and no one wants to end up in the emergency room with someone who's been toxic on some of this stuff.
Yeah, and so health risks when it comes to ingesting a toxic level of melatonin. What do you see? What are the signs of that?
Typically, the first signs are headache and then stomach upset, nausea, vomiting. Those are the typical things. Now, at very, very high doses, you may find yourself confused or slurring words. At its very worst, it would have respiratory impact, but you would have to be at a really ridiculous level to get to something like that. The good news is the vast majority of people, they don't die. But on the other hand, you can be very sick if you're throwing up, nauseous, or slurring words. And that is a frightening element for any parent who has to go to the emergency room for something like that.
We've got a call from Chris in Palm Coast. Good morning, Chris. Go ahead.
Good morning. I was in a stressful boyfriend relationship about 20 years ago, and was taking melatonin, and it was at a lower milligram, but I overdosed on it. And for hours one night, I would close my eyes and I would see these disfigured faces of monsters.
Oh, my goodness.
So I didn't realize it at the time that I had overdosed, but in retrospect, I realized, wow.
Yeah, Dr. Joe
I
is
took too
nodding
much.
here in recognition. Dr. Joe, that's something you've heard of?
Yeah, I am so sorry to hear that. But one of the things about melatonin for people who do take it that have side effects is a lot of folks mention that their dreams when they take melatonin are extraordinarily vivid and like almost surreal or hyper real, if you will. And when you said that, it reminded me of so many folks who have mentioned that as one of their items. In fact, in people who have PTSD, when you were talking about abuse and things, sometimes this can really be triggering when they have some of those vivid dreams or even hallucinations that you're just describing very nicely there, that it can come with it. And again, for some people, melatonin is going to be very nothing. But for others, just like anything, it may be the wrong thing for them. And that is a classic description of one of the things that I hear when it does not go right. Literally a description just like that.
I guess as common as these things are, I mean, one basic place to begin is to make sure that you're talking to your doctor or your kid's pediatrician about what you're giving them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the first step. I mean, there are other approaches. There's the Calm app. There is, as I said, chamomile tea, very gentle. There are other cognitive behavior therapy if you're having trouble falling asleep. There are these other non-medication approaches that one can take. I know for some it can be very big of a struggle, but if you're having that much of a struggle, then that's probably a good reason to be talking to your physician, your provider, to see what they can help you out with. But just know that nothing is innocent when it's at huge dosing at that point.
Right. Well, Dr. Joe Sirven of What's Health Got to Do with It, thanks so much for coming on today and talking about this study.
I love it. Thanks so much, Ann.
All right. Up next, how you can get an exclusive look behind the scenes at the vibrant core of Jacksonville's creative community.
Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you. The Jacksonville Symphony presents the Jacksonville Jazz Collective's Big Band Holiday Concert on November 24th in Jacoby Symphony Hall with holiday hits and jazz classics. Tickets and information at jacksymphony.org.
Hi, David Brancaccio, host of the Marketplace Morning Report here. You may also remember me anchoring the TV program Now on PBS, and I would be very honored if you could join me and WJCT Public Media President and CEO David McGowan on Wednesday, November the 20th. We'll be on stage in Jacksonville exploring everything from how to make the economy better serve more people to the importance of building community and plenty more. I cannot wait to meet you, so RSVP today
at wjct.org/events.
See you soon.
Aid coming into Palestinians in northern Gaza is the lowest it's been in more than a year.
It's buildings falling, it's under rubble, it's disease, it's bombs, it's strikes, food, starvation. There's absolutely no hope right now.
We'll hear from voices on the ground about what and who could change the scale of civilian suffering. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Donald Trump's supporters can't wait for the president-elect to take office in January. But the LGBTQ community sees his election as a major setback. Calls to crisis centers are up. Some same-sex couples are moving up their marriage plans. What's at risk for LGBTQ people facing a new Trump term? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, if you're interested in watching art come to life, you'll have your chance at the CoRK Art District's annual Open Studios weekend. It's just a few days away, and here to share details about the Open Studios event and what visitors can see and learn is Crystal Floyd, an artist and studio director of the CoRK Arts District. Hey, Crystal.
Hi, Ann.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for coming in. I want to hear you describe the Fall Open Studios event. I mean, this is something that CoRK does every year, but it's a really neat vantage point. So for people who haven't been, first of all, just describe a little bit of what the district is, what it looks like, and what purpose it serves.
Sure. CoRK began back in 2011 when a small group of artists got studios in a warehouse that was being repurposed into studio space, and there was about 8 of us starting out. It's now grown into over 65 people, and it's hard for us to be open on a daily basis or even, very frequently because of so many people working and having their own separate artistic careers. So this is a good time to come because everyone's there, has their studios open. We open our sanctuary space so people can come in and see where the work happens, and we hang a new show of work from all of the artists to see what everybody's been up to. The Yellow House participates, and some of our neighbors are also involved. Cool Stuff Vintage across the street will be open. Rick Weller's Studios and Brett Waller has an installation that will be open during the weekend.
And we should say CoRK stands for the location of
It
the
does.
building.
It's corner of Roselle and King.
In
A lot
case
of
you
people
can't
don't
remember.
realize that. Yes.
Right. And so it is in a neighborhood that has, changed. It's partly been defined by CoRK and this sort of new artistic presence that, no longer new, but at the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to give a lot of credit to Bold City Brewery and the breweries in the area that kind of brought people into that little corner. I'm from Jacksonville. I went to Lee High School, which is now Riverside High. And when I was in school, there wasn't very much going on around there or around Stockton Street. So it's nice to see activity and growth in the area.
And so it's a really cool space for people who haven't been there. A lot of really well-known artists in Jacksonville work out of there, including Al Letson and Overstreet Ducasse and Tim Gilmore, yourself.
Yes.
So are all of the artists going to be there? Do they all participate? Do they?
Usually they do. There's a few people who are out of town, but for the most part, we have a pretty good level of participation this year. So I would say at least 80 to 90% of the artists will be there. We have Jay Maestro, Willie Evans, and I believe Al may or may not be involved, but there was an artist who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, Mo Ricks. So we'll have one room kind of dedicated as a tribute to him with some performances going on and some video being played so people can stop by there and, pay their respects to Mo. And we have some other artists who have things planned in their individual studios, demonstrations. Some of the artists just like to be working in their studios that day, and people can come in and see the process. I think that's the really cool part about it, is to see where the work happens and have the opportunity to speak to the artists about what their inspirations are. A lot of the time, people are drawn to things they may not have expected and discover new things. Some people who have never been to the area come to visit and are, just so excited to come back and end up being supporters and friends, throughout the years.
I would imagine it's a little revealing, though, to open up your studio, to be working in front of people that you don't know.
Some of us are more comfortable than others, that's for sure. It's really nice because even at CoRK, a lot of us have different schedules. I'm a night owl. We have a morning shift and a day shift and a night shift that's pretty delineated, but even we don't get to always see what we're all working on. So it's a nice time for us to even walk around and see what everybody's been up to.
So just give us the deets on this. If somebody wants to participate, how can they? When can they?
So it's this weekend from 12 to 6, both on Saturday and Sunday. It's no tickets necessary. It's a free event. You just show up and park. Parking is first come, first serve, but there's parking at the Yellow House and Bold City Brewery. The breweries in the area are open and participate as well. So it's just kind of a fun, big neighborhood event. And yeah, that's pretty much the details of when and where.
And we should say, in addition to working out of CoRK, you've got a new exhibit yourself at the Leitner Museum.
Yes, I do. It's my first solo exhibit, and it's running through January 27th, and people can drop in. It's actually in the gallery adjacent to their cafe, so it's the entrance on Cordova Street down there.
Excellent.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, congratulations. It's a great place,
I appreciate
great space
it.
to be showing. Crystal Floyd, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have comments or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. Join us tomorrow when we talk about the perils of doom spending in troubled times. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News
and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. The Museum of Science and History presents Mission Astronaut, a new exhibition exploring life in space. Mission Astronaut is open September 21st through January 5th. More info at themosh.org.